Wasabi guys, welcome back to another Top 10 Commander video. This time we'll be discussing my picks for the top 10 best engine commanders. Before we get into it though, first I would like to remind you, if you have not already, please do subscribe to the channel. 38,000 subs so far, thank you so much. Now to explain, this could be interpreted in different ways. What an engine commander is to me is basically any commander that allows you to keep your turn going, usually through card advantage or mana, or the ability to repeatedly play more spells. It's pretty straightforward. The concept of an engine, it's what gets your vehicles moving, and an engine in a commander deck is anything that allows you to keep your turn going. Starting it off here with number 10, we have Anji Falkenrath. Only number 10 for the fact that Madness is so niche, and it's really hard to justify playing Anji with any other strategy. However, if you view this commander as an engine, it's been one of the better ones. That was the main appeal here going back to 2019. It wasn't just that you had Madness, it's that you were able to discard Madness cards, triggering Anji, you would untap her and do it all over again. She also had haste, which was a huge bonus. It's always nice when you have an engine commander and you're immediately able to take advantage of it. Now there is some headroom here. While you're likely going to be anchored to the Madness strategy, I highly doubt that we've seen the last Madness support, which means if we get another set with good red-black Madness cards, we could see some returning playability. Number 9 is similarly another 3-mana creature with haste, Jan Jansen Chaos Crafter from Battle for Baldur's Gate, the newest commander option on this list. Jan Jansen is perhaps the most obvious engine out of all engine commanders. The fact that you can just alternate between the abilities if you have a reliable way of untapping Jan Jansen means you could go infinite, creating infinite treasure tokens, infinite constructs, sacrificing one to create two of the other. Why this kind of power was created, a set after New Capenna thought it was a good idea to have treasure tokens come into play tapped so that they weren't, super incredibly powerful. It's beyond me. But we have it. It's another creature with a tap ability that comes into play with haste, meaning it has immediate effectiveness, amazing for combos, amazing for artifact decks in general, and you have 3 great searchability colors, so you know if you need a piece, if you're missing something, it shouldn't take you long to find it. And then number 8, we have Teyam Luminous Enigma. Now, 4 or 5 years ago, I would probably have gave Guru of Spores on this list. And the reason why I decided against him in 2022, it's not just because he's aged, but the ability to keep your turn going is a lot more impressive with a lot of these newer commanders. And while you could certainly keep a turn going for a long time with Gave, it just seems like a one-trick pony nowadays. You get doubling season out there and then maybe an Ashnod's Altar and win. With Teyam, you have the combo potential. That's a big reason why it's a popular commander. But even in a casual setting, you have the ability to keep your turn going. The static ability of having your creatures enter the battlefield with vigilance counters enables the second part, where you want to remove 3 counters from among creatures you control to not only mill yourself, but you're bringing back permanent cards with mana value 3 or less. So you're dumping things into your graveyard that you can easily bring back for just a few mana and counters that you're providing yourself with. Again, it's another case of a commander option where one part of it so clearly feeds into the other. And when you get this deck going, it is very satisfying. And then number 7, we have the Gitrog Monster. I had to really decide between this and Tatyova because I really like both, but I had to give the edge to Gitrog because of the way that you're able to sacrifice lands and take advantage of that, and even land destruction to go a step further. The strategy can be a bit more hit or miss, but I think because with land strategies you already have strong synergies with things like Crucible of Worlds, Ramunap Excavator, this type of land commander can go from 0 to 100 real fast. What also gives it a bit of an edge in land strategies is the fact that you have access to black. So you're getting your card draw off of lands going into the graveyard from anywhere. You're able to play additional lands on each of your turns. The idea here is to ramp up to the point where you could eventually play things like Torment of Hailfire, or even something as crazy as Death Cloud. Keep in mind, if you incorporate more stacks cards that sacrifice lands, you'll also be drawing cards. Number 6, we have Jhoira Weatherlight Captain. This is a common theme that you're going to notice, that some of the best commanders in the format are typically the ones that just straight up let you draw cards for playing whatever spell follows your strategy. And in this case, it could be anything that's historic. It's very open-ended, which means you could go for straight up artifacts if you want to go more competitive. That seems to be what people are really interested in. You could go with sagas, there aren't too many to choose from, but you could also do just legendary cards in general. This is right in the sweet spot, in my opinion, when it comes to engine commanders. If you're paying too much more than 4 mana for your commander and you're not getting a significant return, it becomes less and less worth it. There are some that get away with it, but if you're asking me, 4 mana commanders commanders and a clear way of drawing into more cards, getting some type of card advantage, mana advantage, a way to play more spells. This is the template, and having her right in the middle of the list I think is appropriate. She makes a good casual commander, she makes an interesting competitive commander. I don't just have cards on here for combo potential, but that's something you could do. There's a lot of cards like this. She's far from the only one where when you play a spell you get to draw a card, but because you have it on a legendary creature that can be your commander, it adds to the consistency of your deck. At number 5, we have similarly another play a spell draw a card engine, and this time it is Sythis Harvest's Hand. A bit more narrow, yes, the strategy is exclusively enchantments here. Historic offers you more options. However, we have to acknowledge that for only 2 mana, this legendary creature probably shouldn't exist. And this goes back to what I was saying about Jhoira being that sweet spot, that template for 4 mana commanders giving you card advantage. Sythis breaks that very clearly. A 2 mana commander can be fun and interesting, but to have it offer you a way to keep your turn going and to recover some life loss is insane. You're saving 2 mana compared to the previous commander. It does add up. If you have to replay a commander multiple times in a game, the less mana you have to spend including the commander tax, the better. And number 4, we have, in my opinion, the best land commander, at least as far as engines go, AC Tyrant of Gyre Strait. So a bit more expensive than the average, but you all understand why this is still powerful. You get a similar trigger here to Tatyova without the life gain, unfortunately, but you have the upside of the Gitrog monster, where you were able to play an additional land on each of your turns, without any downside. So getting some of the best of both worlds here. Land strategies tend to be some of the most overpowered in my opinion, and you combine that with a way to continue getting more land drops. Honestly, everything I said about the Gitrog monster could be applied to why I think AC is also a strong commander. I think it's worth pointing out that unlike with the Gitrog monster, the trigger here to draw a card is on individual lands. Gitrog's was whenever one or more lands was put into a graveyard, so if you play something like Escape Shift, you're drawing an insane number of cards. Getting an additional land drop also helps in keeping your turn going, even if you're not going to combo with this type of strategy, which, surprise, surprise, you most certainly could. Even if you're not doing that in casual play, it is still incredibly easy to keep a turn going for a while. And number 3, Chulane Tellarif Tales. I was honestly a little bit surprised to find out that this commander wasn't a top 10 played commander in terms of total decks made. It's somewhere around 46, which isn't horrible. I mean, there are hundreds of played commanders every week, but when you see this, you know immediately that it is an engine. And I've said this countless times, engines make the best commanders. They just do. They're not all about pure power. They're about enabling your power. And with Chulane, you have the best of everything that you would want in a commander game as far as advantage is concerned. You have a way to draw cards and you have a way of putting extra lands into play. If you needed extra land drops with AC, here you don't need them, you just put them straight into play, which is one of the most busted things about Chulane. All you really need is some creature that can return other creatures to your hand, like a Temur Sabertooth, or you could get a White Mane Lion to bounce itself back to your hand, and you could spend the whole turn just drawing a card, maybe putting lands into play as you draw into them, and because those lands don't enter the battlefield tapped, you have more mana to work with, and your turn is going to continue going. Worst case scenario, if you don't have anything that's busted that can easily just bounce creatures back to your hand, you pay 3 mana and tap them to do it. You have access to 3 colors, which offers you a wide variety of creatures to choose from. The point is, if you don't have a way to keep your turn going with Chulane, it's probably your fault. This is one of the easiest commanders to build around. It's just play a bunch of creatures, you draw into other good creatures, what's not to like? Number 2, we have probably the most popular commander, if I had to say, over the past year, Prosper Tomebound. I stand by my thesis with this commander. Why I believe that the good card advantage commanders are in that sweet spot of 4 mana is because of Prosper Tomebound. I will admit initially I wasn't super impressed, but then you just piece together a deck filled with a ton of play from exile cards, and then it started to click. Prosper Tomebound isn't your typical engine. No, Prosper Tomebound had one goal in mind. Bring 2 strategies that weren't really strategies, combine them into one brand new strategy. So you're not just creating treasure tokens or exiling cards and playing them, but you're rewarding yourself for doing one and getting the other. The beginning of the end step trigger is great, that's what's going to help us our following turns, but the real engine here is Pact Boon. You play a card from exile, you get a treasure token. It's that simple. You'll notice that Prosper isn't as combo potent as some of the other commanders on this list, and you could use that as an argument against Prosper. However, I think the best engines shouldn't be considered because they combo, but because they make a strategy work. Without Prosper, your deck doesn't function. It's like taking an engine out of an actual car. Before we move on to number 1, let's talk about some honorable mentions. We have Shorikai Genesis Engine, quite literally an engine commander, but as far as keeping your turn going, it doesn't really do that, and I think that's really what it has going against it. Still good card draw though, you do get some discard and graveyard synergies with that deck. Grenzo Dungeon Warden is amazing, incredibly underrated commander, but rather limited when it comes to bottom card of your library support. Sram Senior Edificer is really no different than Cyphus or Joyra, but the strategy of course is a little bit more narrow, auras, equipment, and vehicles, and you're in mono white, but as far as drawing cards off of playing spells, it's just as good. We have a favorite of mine, I love Tashar Ancestor's Apostle. A lot of people don't know this, but this is one of the most combo ready commanders ever. You just build a deck around a lot of cheap artifacts that sacrifice themselves. You bring back artifact creatures, you sacrifice them. Oh, it has a trigger where you can bring back other artifacts from your graveyard. That totally won't combo and keep your turn going. And we have the Commander Azami Lady of Scrolls. Of course, that's an engine. If you have any way of untapping her, or untapping any of your wizards, you can continue drawing cards. But to me, this commander is more of a one-trick pony. Been there, done that. Laboratory Maniac, WinCon. Totally didn't see that coming. So number 1, the best engine commander in my opinion is Korvold Fakehurst King. Now for those of you who've been watching this channel for a long time, you might know that Prossh Skyraider of Care is perhaps my all-time favorite commander. I love the versatility, I love how there's still cards today being released in every set that will make a commander deck built around that commander even more powerful. So it ages really well, and I think Korvold Fakehurst King showed up to the scene and pretty much stole the spotlight, which didn't make me super happy, but for what it's worth, you actually get an engine here with Korvold, whereas for a lot of engines, Prossh can be a part of it as a good sack outlet, but not so much as the centerpiece. Here you have a way of sacrificing permanents to directly draw cards, and you get more +1/+1 counters on Korvold. It goes back to what I said about a lot of these other cards here. You have one part of the commander that enables the other part, and that's when you enter the battlefield or attack with them. So you can sacrifice using Korvold, and you can draw cards using Korvold. There's a good reason why this has been one of the most played commanders. It's also why I was surprised to see this way above Chulane in terms of total decks made, because it's the same justification for playing it. It's an amazing engine. Chulane's also an amazing engine. They're both the same mana cost. This arguably provides you with more power. And to me, I think that's the main difference here. It's easy to go off, I guess, with engines like Chulane, but it's harder to seal the deal. With Korvold, all it takes is a turn of sacrificing and drawing cards, and your commander has 21 power. Any guesses as to what you can do with a 21 powered commander with flying? And because it does have some muscle behind it, it does what really no other engine on this list does. So the fact that it can seal the deal itself puts it in a very unique category of its own. So anyway, that's gonna do it here for the top 10 best engine commanders. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. I understand this is going to be a bit more open to interpretation. Not every engine has to be about card draw or mana, and there are a ton of commanders that offer you both. So out of the hundreds, if not thousands of legendary creatures, I'm certain that my opinion is going to be different than yours. As always, Commander Void here signing off. I will see you all next time.